quality of all relationships is massively affected by their attachment styles. And if you have an anxious attachment, you'll want to watch this video. I made a video on the avoidant already, but today we focus on the anxious. Specifically, the behaviors and coping strategies that an anxious attachment has. The primary goal of someone that has an anxious attachment is to increase intimacy and reduce their fear of abandonment. Ultimately, with the goal to feel safe. Now, this entire attachment dynamic of the anxious stems from childhood, as all attachment styles do. So as a child, they were neglected. They very likely had some form of emotional, physical, and or sexual abuse, which created this sense of low self-worth, as well as a very low sense of safety. Real quick, I'm Brian, and I help people find more love and fulfillment in their lives. If you want to work with me, sign up to my email waitlist, as well as follow me for more content. Also, what can happen is if they experience a death of someone close as a child, that would definitely trigger an abandonment wound, as well as an anxious attachment later on in life. In order for someone that has an anxious attachment to feel safe, they do what's called activating and protesting behaviors. And if you're in a relationship with an avoidant attachment, they will trigger the shit out of you, and you will find yourself doing activating and protesting behavior. So as you get more anxious and you sense your partner pulling away or not communicating with you, you start to do all these different things, starting with this one, which is obsessing over the relationship. And what happens is that when the anxious starts obsessing over the relationship, you'll see their life outside the relationship start to nosedive. So their work life will suffer, their social life will suffer. What they also do is put their partner on a pedestal. Again, this ties back to low self-worth. And because you don't feel like you're lovable, you don't think you're good enough, and you're fearful of abandonment, your partner becomes sort of your savior. People that have anxious attachment also have a lot of fear and anxiety when being alone. Again, that ties directly with fear of abandonment. They also think that their options are very limited. And so when they are in a relationship, they think that that person is their only or best chance at love. And as such, they hold on very tightly when they do get into a relationship. So they're very committed and they do not give up easily. In fact, this is the actual glue that keeps the relationship together when they're with an avoidant. This is why you don't really ever see two people that have avoidant attachment stay together very long in a relationship. And an anxious attachment aren't attracted to each other because they don't trigger each other's childhood wounds. We are attracted to people who trigger our childhood wounds. Now, if the anxiety of someone that has anxious attachment increases too much, they'll start to then do what are called protesting behaviors. So very common to have excessive communication. In fact, they'll have a desire to have excessive communication, a lot more than what the avoidant is capable of. So as their anxiety increases when the avoidant is pulling away, they'll start to text and call and email back to back. And oftentimes each of those messages will be very long. Again, the whole point of this is to reestablish intimacy. Other protesting behaviors are also withdrawing, which is kind of funny because the avoidant also does this, but they both do it for different reasons. The anxious will withdraw in a way to punish the avoidant to indirectly increase intimacy. So they'll do things like give them a cold shoulder or give them the silent treatment. And on the surface, it may look like they're trying to pull away, but they're trying to do this indirectly to get the avoidant to come back to them. They also do what's keeping score. Keeping score is basically tracking the behavior patterns of their partner. If your partner typically responds back to texts and messages within 10 to 15 minutes, if that partner goes beyond that, like let's say 30 minutes or an hour, the alarm bells start ringing and the anxiety starts to increase. They'll even track the patterns of their partner's daily routine. And if the partner doesn't do that routine, again, the alarm bells turn back on, anxiety increases, they'll start questioning their partner to again increase a sense of intimacy, to increase safety and security. That's one thing that is a superpower of people that have anxious attachment, is that they are super hypervigilant. They're very good at reading people, and they're very quick to knowing when something is off. Another thing that they can do is start acting hostile. So this could be projecting anger, yelling, screaming, complaining. It can even get physical in some cases. Again, this is not to make the anxious attachment look bad. It is simply their hurt inner child crying for help. What people that have anxious attachment also do is manipulation. So this could be in the form of affection, gifts, sex, basically doing things to reel the partner back in. Again, to increase intimacy, reestablish safety and connection. Another protesting behavior is making them feel jealous. Now, avoidance might do this as well, but not on purpose. So examples of this would be flirting in front of your partner, hanging out with an ex, so on and so forth. But the avoidant does it to withdraw and escape the relationship. The anxious actually do this as an indirect way to trigger the avoidant to get their attention and connection connection again. So it's actually a way to increase intimacy, even though it's a little bit paradoxical. They're trying to trigger them into chasing them again. That's what the anxious is doing in this situation. Let's talk about the life cycle of an anxious attachment triggered thought and behavior loop. Let's say the partner hasn't called today, or they took a really long time to message back. The anxious attachment system will activate and ask, is there a threat? And as the attachment system activates more and more, they'll think something like, maybe he or she is angry with me. Maybe I did something wrong. And so then they will attempt to seek reassurance and closeness, intimacy. I'll plan a romantic dinner. And if that doesn't work, then we go deeper into the distress and maybe have a thought like this. Will he or she text or call back, questioning the relationship? And as the anxiety increases, if the partner is still not responsive, security and distress increases even more. Oh my God, it's been hours. Maybe they're going to leave me or cheat on me. And you can see how these thoughts are getting worse and worse. And they will continue to question if the relationship has a chance. Still no signs. Will I ever see them again? Ever see them again? That's when you get really distressed. Anxious people will start to think in terms of black and white, doom and gloom. As it increases some more activating behaviors kick in. They're going to break up with me. Will I ever find love again? Another one that I forgot to write was spying. And this is when the anxious attachment system gets really activated. So they'll do things like try to log into their partner's computers or phones, scan through messages to see what's going on, right? They're trying to establish security and safety. They might even show up to their partner's workplace or typical social hangout place to see if they can bump into them. Again, the whole point is to establish connection, intimacy, reduce their fear of abandonment, and get back to a sense of safety. Now, all these things I talked about for the anxious attachment is not to bash them, because the avoidant has just as many insecure and destructive behavior patterns. Remember, both of these attachment systems are activating from a place of fear, insecurity, and low self-worth. Again, all coming back to childhood.
I know that video was intense. It was not my intention to bash people who have anxious attachment. My wife has had anxious attachment, and she works and she continues to work on it, just as I continue to work on my avoidant. Listen, we all have shit and baggage and insecurities, and the only way we can begin healing that is by bringing awareness to it. So this is how it begins. And make sure to follow me for more content, as well as sign up for my email waitlist if you want to work with me.